Everybody loves a good switcheroo, and Freaky Friday tops the list. The term "I like to be you for a day" started out as a single phrase and ended up snowballing into one of the most recognized tropes possibly ever. Often used as a great plot device for bridging the gap and showcasing the differences between two perspectives, the Freaky Friday franchise has been a huge staple of shining a light on mother daughter duos on the silver screen. In Golden Age television, the relationship between mothers and daughters were often portrayed as surface level or downright vain. Whether that be for lack of care or time, we usually saw little to no emotional connection. But if we did get the occasional special episode situation, it mainly dealt with rebelliousness in the youth and challenging authority. And they ended with meeting somewhere in the middle, then never interacting again for a few episodes. A few eras later, quite a few mother daughter duos dominated in sitcoms, conducting a comedic cynicism to their dynamic and ditching the emotional vulnerabilities for passive aggressive quips. All seeming to work in their own ways, Freaky Friday's emergence came at a really great time. So much so, it's now considered tradition for a remake every decade. However, they haven't all exactly withstood the passage of time. With a new set of societal problems and stances each go round, the Freaky Friday saga is an unexpected testament to pop culture. Though the Gilmore Girls are, without a doubt, still topping the list, I like to think that the Freaky series is still pretty high up there in relevancy. Inspired by author Thorin Smith's novel Turnabout, which followed a switch between husband and wife, writer and composer Mary Rogers, who was a youth herself at the time, found a lot of humor in the premise and went on to write Freaky Friday. Published as a children's book in 1972, the story took a lot from her own life, being the daughter of famous composer Richard Rogers and philanthropist/socialite mother Dorothy Rogers, as well as her being a mother herself of 5 children. The first Freaky Friday film was released in 1976 by Buena Vista Pictures and was directed by Gary Nelson. Following the lives of Ellen Andrews, a hardworking stay-at-home mother, and daughter, Annabelle, a scatterbrained tween, both wanting nothing more than to have their own plights understood and taken seriously. But after saying one magic phrase, their day is unlike any other, and they finally get a chance to walk in each other's shoes. And now with 4 variants of the movie going around, with a sequel on the way, I thought it'd be a good time to put my unemployment to good use and watch every Freaky Friday movie. And what a journey it has been. In this video, we are going to judge these remakes by opening theme, setting and tone, family dynamics between the Andrews, the body swap with a smidge of the aftermath, and actors' chemistry. And last but not least, I will be ranking the versions from best to worst Freaky Friday movie, and just a mild warning, it's not the one you think. The 1970s, a decade of tremendous growth for women's rights nationwide. They were granted the right to own their own bank accounts, couldn't face job termination due to pregnancies, and brought legal attention to harassment in the workplace. But while this story does take place in that time period, it focuses less on the hustle and bustle of a working woman in the big city and more on a secluded suburban lifestyle. Starring actors Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris, I can only assume this Freaky Friday was most true to the book, seeing as they stuck to a very grounded and uncomplicated view of the average nuclear family. We open with a colorful animated credit scene that's complemented with the theme song sung by the actors that just kind of oozed that family feature feeling that I could only recall from Saturday morning television. And since this was released during Disney's most clunky time for live-action films, they had more than enough legroom to get creative with their works. Because what were the odds that anyone thought it could become as big as it did? At the time, extremely low. In this clean-cut setting, we meet Annabelle in her messy room, and are instantly given an account of her own family through narration, mirroring her opening monologue from the infamous novel.
My name is Annabelle Andrews. This is my room. Don't knock it. I like it this way. You don't have to look for anything.
This version of Annabelle is a sporty, brace-faced tween who cares a great deal about her athletic career. She enjoys her father, who is a fantastically cool person, despises her little brother, who is a very neat person, and mentions that her and her mother, Ellen, haven't been seeing eye to eye lately. Less an annoyance, but more so in meeting expectations.
Listen, I screamed at her. I'm not a screamer, you know. Listen, you're not letting me have any fun, and I'm sick of it. You're always pushing me around and telling me what to do. How come nobody ever gets to tell you what to do? Will you tell me that?
I think this has a lot to do with Jodie Foster's delivery, whom even at the young age of 13 still sounds like she needs a 40 and a smoke break. But it adds a lot of comedic value in how she expresses her grievances. Her main issue with her mother Ellen is how she views her externally. She believes Ellen wants a tidier, ladylike version of Annabelle that handles her personal responsibilities, whereas Annabelle already feels comfortable in who she is and doesn't see her quirks as an area of concern. Writing wise, I can imagine this being a very prevalent topic for a lot of young people at this time, who are now considered boomers, growing up with the silent or traditional generation as parents. During the first family scene, we meet the Andrews in their kitchen and observe their daily routine and casual conversations. And these are very important because they will single handedly set the tone for the rest of the movie. In a hurry to meet her friend, Annabelle is confronted by Ellen for not eating breakfast or cleaning her room. Annabelle thinks her room looks fine and is already a little too on edge about watching her weight, which shifts the discussion to Ellen not understanding what worries Annabelle could possibly have for someone her age. Not wanting to explain, Annabelle finds a reason to leave and they don't see each other until the end of the movie. Their verbal spats are very typical and are something you'd probably see in real life, not exaggerated tones from either parties or making anyone the victim or villain, but gives the audience enough insight to understand that they both have attainable demands, but are just going through a rough patch at the moment. We then see Ellen's interactions with her husband, Bill, played by John Aston, who is in PR management and is possibly one of the worst movie husbands of all time. But it somehow balances out because he also plays one of the best TV husbands of all time. But in this case, he's very good at playing a scumbag. We finally get to the transformation after they share their thoughts aloud about one another and say the same words at the same time.
I wish I could switch places with her for just one day.
And with that begins the chaos that is their story. And before we circle back to everyone's switcheroo aftermath, I will say that this one was unapologetically wacky and was consistently aware that it was a very unserious premise, but it does a fantastic job at standing 10 toes down at keeping up the upbeat energy throughout the movie. But the next one in particular leaves me with a lot of questions. Throughout the 90s, the ABC network broadcasted a series of live action made for TV remakes, including The Shaggy Dog, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, and Escape to Witch Mountain. With Freaky Friday being the finale of ABC's Saturday Family Movie, I can probably guess that that was the most anticipated of the four, due to the incredible reception from the original and not so great reviews following the made for TV sequels. It made a lot of sense why certain characters are the way they are. The Andrews, as well as the community around them, were supposed to play a much bigger role in Freaky World, with 3 more continuations. Jumping back to New York City, where the books originally took place, there were intentions to expand on other characters, but the sequels that were made just didn't garner enough attention. So, what do companies usually do with sequels that weren't all that memorable? They pretend it didn't happen. So, there's context. But since they're not canon, it means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme. But getting back to 95, I will say that this one really shocked me the most, and not because the obvious cash grab or copyright extensions it most likely was used for, but because it's the only one out of the entire franchise that had no idea what it wanted to be. As this story introduces itself in a quiet suburbia once again, we meet Ellen, a recent divorcee and mom on the go. She's constantly making and taking phone calls and has a huge deal in the works for her fashion company, and her objective for the day is to please her top notch clientele with top notch ideas. And then we finally meet the new Annabelle, who's still in her tomboyish apparel, but this time with a bit of vengeance. She's kind of a lone ranger with an enormous chip on her shoulder, but the main thing she does care about is sports, once again. Her objective is to successfully juggle her daily responsibilities of junior high. And then there's the son, who has nothing. And strangely enough, out of all the remakes, this family dynamic actually felt the saddest to me. I don't know what kind of toll divorce takes on a family. I'm sure it's absolutely awful. But for a family flick, there was a melancholic vibe that was a little too hard to move on from. Disney has always been good at showcasing characters going through adversities, but you, as a viewer, know that there's help on the way. But the tone of the story didn't give me that hope. It didn't even give me music, which was a huge Disney letdown. It's painstakingly stilted and uncomfortable, like you're a guest in the house and paid a visit at the wrong time. To put it lightly, this version of the Andrews is not pleasant. There's no lingering comic relief in the distance. There's an awkwardness amongst everyone, almost like you can tell that they had little to no time to build any chemistry with one another, and it all just feels very mundane and flat. In this version, the new Ellen, played by Shelley Long, is dating Bill, who is a coworker at her job, and the kids don't really like him, which is already a huge red flag to me, but she's desperate enough to make it work. She's also kind of portrayed as a pushover and struggles to speak up when necessary. They also brought back the smoking habit to symbolize her stressed moments, but for some reason it feels more like a cry for help to me. There's a real sadness to her that the audience can feel, but tone wise, I just don't think it makes sense to bring it to a story that once held so much charm. And our new Anna, played by Gabby Hoffman, gives a much more fiery approach to the character. Still leaning on the athletic route, Anna is the leader of her swim team, but unfortunately, most of them don't like her. She doesn't exactly have a main friend group throughout this movie, but carries a lot of scorned child of divorce energy. She feels like the world at large doesn't take her issues seriously and is kind of sidelined every which way. And while I do respect the her against the world approach, because it was unlike anything they did before, I couldn't help but feel that this version kind of takes it a step too far. Divorce in the 90s was one of the hottest topics of the decade, and was always a huge spectacle, especially in pop culture. Mature audiences loved watching the fallout of celebrity divorces and publicized true crime stories regarding separation. So while this version isn't exactly that extreme, I can't quite understand using this franchise to bite off the divorce media frenzy and placing it in the fun for the family lineup, especially with a scene like this.
When are you going to get a little more responsible?
Look, I just forgot to write it down. Big deal.
Yeah. Like you forgot to clean your room, and you forgot to help with the dishes, and you forgot to...
And you forgot to stay married.
So, I'm uncomfortable. And I've gotta say, there really is something very haunting about the little brother without the father in this rendition. Because now that I know that there was this entire arc that was supposed to be in place, his presence feels much more vacant to me. It's almost like he's stuck in a plotless limbo that only we know he'll never escape. Ellen and Annabelle's swap happened through a talisman that was gifted by Bill, and is said to hold a special cultural magic that we never really find out about. It's deliberately vague, but that's kind of the running gag throughout the movie. All we know is that it's Chinese, and they go to a restaurant they frequently buy from for the pendant's translation. And I'm just gonna address this now. I know that we're aware that Orientalism plays a part in some of these renditions, but the following clip I'm gonna show you left me feeling many things. Confusion being the main one. All I ask you to do is to pay close attention to the old man's lips.
Grandfather, tell us what this means. Mind is everything. If you cling to thought with will, it assumes outward form.
So, many questions to be had there, but all I can say is no. That actor was not Chinese, nor could he speak the language, and I have no idea who's dubbing him, because he's not credited, so we'll never know. But the mom pretty much spends most of her screen time going in and out of detention and regains her confidence of speaking up again in the process. But unfortunately, the ways they go about the switch still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. When Ellen portrays Annabelle, it's like a completely different person playing another person. She's more outspoken, she fights for what she wants, and stands up to her bullies, which is all great. But the question is, where did it come from? Because it's not a gradual change like it's usually written out to be. From the little we see of Ellen's personality, she seemed incredibly solemn and distracted, mainly by choice. So it was kind of odd for this newfound leadership to jump out of her. And it is tradition for these movies to have a skill that the mom is naturally good at. and in this case, it's Spanish class. But to go from that to a feminist freedom fighter is a little crazy. I wish I could act like the character development made sense in this movie, but this was just an example of having uninteresting leads. Annabelle becoming Ellen isn't all that great either, but at least her perspective made sense. She goes through the motions of confusion at her mother's job, but she ends up making the most of it and keeps her mom's clients. She finally accepts Bill, even though I still think the guy is a walking red flag, and she gets more insight on her little brother's feelings. But did I, as a viewer, care about this at all? No. No, I did not. This movie actually felt strangely long, which is an insane take for a made for TV movie from the 90s, but here I am saying it. This movie lacked charm, humor, patience. It didn't know its tone. I wasted my good nachos on it, and I can see why its existence had faded into obscurity. 2003's Freaky Friday was the first box office rendition since the 70s release and was the highest grossed. Directed by Mark Waters and starring Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, came a style that took part in repopulating the Freaky Friday name and was a stamp in Y2K filmography. Opening with a slew of paintings and pictures of mother-daughter duos, we are presented with the slow to upbeat tempo rendition of Happy Together by the very popular 2000s pop-punk band Simple Plan, and quickly transitioned to the hustle and bustle of the early morning of the Andrews. Ellen, who is now referred to as Tess, is a famous psychologist and full-time workaholic. She's in the process of promoting her highly anticipated book, juggling her daily patient clientele, as well as her family's dynamics post-passing of her late husband. But her main focus is the drum roll to her wedding day. In this rendition, Annabelle is aged up and has a completely different style than her previous versions. Since Anna relies heavily on rebelling against her mother's wishes, actress Lindsay Lohan wanted to go all out and was inspired by the looks of Avril Lavigne. Lindsay imagined the ultimate rocker chick look, down to the chipped nails, dark eye makeup, striped colored hair, and the infamous 2000s trend of low-rise pants. She's also arguably the most dramatic Anna, and yet still carries the most laid-back vibe by far. The son is still there, but this time around he advances from stock character to the average annoying little brother with a smidge bit more personality. Our Bill is now called Ryan, and is easily my personal favorite rendition of the new guy. Because the bar was already straddling the Earth's core, but at least he's nice. And then there's the grandpa. Yeah. Besides being the comic relief, I think the role of Grandpa was actually very necessary watching it, and it's for the same reason the last movie fell flat to me. Without a full house or the personality of it, the premise makes less sense. If there's no occasional kooky neighbor or something to showcase the outlandishness of what suburbia has to offer, it's just not as fun, especially when there's no chemistry. But luckily, these actors had it. Taking a step away from the morning routine, I think it made more sense to highlight the first car scene, which is a great follow-up to the sped-up opening. Anna sits in the passenger seat with her feet on the dashboard, dominating the conversation for permission to get an ear piercing. She is quickly denied, and in Anna-like fashion, she blurts out her new catchphrase, "You're ruining my life." Anna then compromises for a chance to drive. Tess humors her and asks if she brought her permit. She did not. In the back seat, little brother is little brothering, and Anna accuses him of stealing it. Tessa's boy mom energy awakens and claims she shouldn't blame him for everything and thinks she probably misplaced it in her very junky room, which is a main trait of hers they brought back from the original. Anna accuses her of always taking her son's side. Tess no longer wants to engage, and Anna's off to showcase her day. Since the drum roll to Tessa's wedding day is the recurring theme, she tries her absolute best to make sure everything's in tip-top shape. Drawing inspiration from the 90s rendition, they decide to keep the switch cultural, specifically from a Chinese restaurant called House Chang in downtown Los Angeles. And typically this would be the start of the immediate switch that changes the course of their entire day. But this time around, they make you get a real feel for their routines beforehand, so you know what to expect, which was a much better idea. Anna has a huge gig with her band coming up, has a one-sided arch nemesis, a major crush on Chad Michael Murray, and has a teacher that despises her. Tess is practically planning her own wedding and honeymoon. keeping track of her varied patient clientele via phone and physical meetings, along with doing everyday mom stuff. So now that we know their struggles and goals, we can only look forward to how it all plays out. After reciting a special fortune cookie at the same time, they unknowingly activate a spell that was caused by an older woman from the restaurant. And you can tell she's going to play a huge part later because of the gongs they play every time she's on screen. And then they switch places the following morning. But honestly, I know this was a modern theatric release, but there was something about the pacing that for me dragged on a bit, especially one storyline in particular. I know I praised it for trying to add a fullness to the film by making it more humorous and giving it more side plots, but that didn't always mean that they were entertaining side plots. But I think it was at least trying to give the actors characters with a little bit of range to them to enhance the stakes. Because, like the first movie, the communities are supposed to make the movies full. Without it, you're looking at a lot of nothing that may be a day but feels like forever. Their portrayals of each other also adds a ton of humor, and Lindsay and Jamie Lee really upped the ante with their designated roles. So much so, I think that guitar scene alone goes viral every few months online. They just went all out and clearly had a closeness you could feel on screen and off to successfully play each other without question. And it feels more accurate because, once again, they expose us to more of the characters in the beginning. The switch back to their original lives was the most earned aspect to me out of the rest of the other duos. There was a genuine understanding from both dynamics that we as an audience can see, and they walked away feeling a newfound respect for one another. It was a better delivery, and there's no question as to why this movie was a big hit in the box office. And although I think that sticking Jamie Lee and Lindsay in a sequel instead of a new movie with a brand new premise was an overall mistake, I guess we'll just have to see what they come up with that made it worthwhile. So, here we are. It's the final Freaky Friday, and you all have questions. Like, when did this happen? Why did they do it? Who is in charge? And other things, I'm sure. And as previously mentioned, Mary Rogers' dad was a composer, and she, along with her family, took a great liking to the theater. Before writing Freaky Friday, Mary had a short lived songwriting career in the 1950s, but dropped it due to gender discrimination and internal fears of living up to her father's success. It wasn't until several decades later when Disney Theatrical Productions developed the idea and debuted it in 2016. With moderately promising reviews, the stage play turned into a made-for-TV film adaptation in 2018. So while it did feel random, it was something that could have been in the works long before the public was aware of it. Now, to be honest with you, I've seen this movie about 5 times now, and it's not because I enjoy it, but because I had no ambition to ever finish it. I wasn't familiar with the songs, which was unfortunate, but musicals were already going through a real slump around this time. Also, the fact that absolutely no one really asked for this to happen. But finally getting around to it, I can say without a doubt, it tried. It really tried. And I could feel it. But did I like it? Well, let's get to that. Opening with bright, colorful animated credits as per the original, they give us a song. But instead of a duet, it's in the perspective of Annabelle, who is now called Ellie in this version, played by Cozy Zulsdorf. And before I say something that feels mean-spirited, I just want to acknowledge that her room looks like Disney-fied perfection. I love the colors, I love the use of space and lighting. It was like a stock photo come to life. But out of every daughter's style, I have to say that the spirit of Tumblr and Hot Topic was heavy in this one's heart, and she was getting front row tickets to see Halsey by any means necessary. We open with her and her friends anxiously scrolling over the biggest event in their high school called The Hunt, where you're given clues and you roam around town to find the items listed, and Ellie wants nothing more than to win first place. The little brother in this movie, now called Fletcher, is a magician and aims to be the biggest magic guy in Vegas one day. And you know what? At least they gave him something this time around. The new mother, Catherine, played by Heidi Blinkenstaff, is a caterer. And like the last version, plans her own wedding with the help of her catering team. The main family, now referred to as the Bakers, are more prevalent as well. The first family scene is chaotic. But along with Ellie making sure her mother approves of her going on the hunt, Fletcher trying to master his next trick, and Catherine still striving for perfection, the soon-to-be husband, Mike, is just trying to be the father that stepped up. Everyone's intentions are clear, and we can see that. And that's when I suddenly had a thought. With every Andrews family introduction, there's always something that's a sudden hit or miss for me when it comes to how the family interacts with each other. And that turned out to be interior design playing a hidden role in it. Truthfully, I didn't think it would, but unlike all the other houses, this one, albeit spacious, did not match the vibe of this family. If we look at the varied renditions, the 70s version of the home was very much of the times and had character, especially since it's where Ellen stays at most of the day. It also made sense financially to fit a family of four to have a home like that, with the main breadwinner working in public relations at the time. The 90s version also looked lived in, with nothing too spacious or extravagant, but meeting them in the aftermath of adjusting from two paychecks to one. With Ellen's quips about being on a tight budget and eating cigarettes and air for breakfast, their atmosphere matched their circumstances they were given. But something about the late 2010s home felt too expansive and out of tune for a family portrayed as being so down to earth. I guess in terms of interior design, houses like that are sort of the standard now, but attempting to add a family dog and a bunch of background wedding staffers made me think I wasn't the only one who saw the rich but hollow vibe this house gave off. But I don't know, maybe I am overthinking it. You can leave your thoughts down below. This time around, the switch is very different. After Catherine rejects Ellie's proposal for the hunt, they sing and activate the old switcheroo with an hourglass that was given to them by their dearly departed father. No riddles, no fortune cookies, just the phrase, "I hate you, Mom," can start a revolution. The community aspect makes a big comeback and showcases more of Ellie's high school experiences this time around. And there's something about this town that appears a lot cleaner. I assume it's that Ultra HD effect that makes things look so crisp it's almost fake, but it's a modern Disney flick, so what can you do? But the important thing is that they have to find the other hourglass to switch back before time runs out, because they conveniently break the first one, and that strategically ties into the hunt. Good job, writers. I see what you did there, and the rest is history. I'm going to be honest and say that throughout this movie, I think this version of the family had the least amount of problems that needed to be fixed in the aftermath, but I really think they tried to make things happen. It just felt a little void. And it kind of favors the last movie in that regard. The chemistry between Catherine and Ellen DeGeneres was believable. I can't say that they had the best comedic timing, which was still one of the main components, but in fairness, this film's tone had no choice but to be a little bit more on the theatrical side, since it was based on a play. But as far as everyone else, I think they played some of the best static characters I've ever seen. They can sing, they can dance, and they can smile. But do I remember their names? Not one bit. Also, in case I forgot, there is a love interest for Ellie in this one as well as the rest of the movies, but they're so sweet and normal together in this one. There's nothing to really report on. There were no blurred lines, and the young man just was green flags all around. He was no Chad Michael Murray, and I think that's best for everyone involved. And since this is the first time it's ever been turned into a TV musical, I should probably address the mouse ears in the room. This rendition includes a little over 10 songs that feel in place for the scenes, which is great. They never felt like they dragged on for too long, and was used as a great tool to express everyone's thoughts and feelings. And not to be too controversial, but I actually thought the songs had a happy-go-lucky essence that put me in the mind of the original. I especially loved Catherine's voice. I thought her range was phenomenal and really stole the show with whatever scene she did. While she wasn't my personal favorite version of the mother, I actually empathized with her way more than the other mothers. She's like neck and neck with the one being cheated on, but overall, this movie didn't feel like a cash grab to me. And I'll say it, I liked that the magic phrase to switch them back was a simple, "I love you" to each other, because that's the Disney magic that never goes out of style. There was a lot of care and consideration put into this, and I can see why this play did as well as it did. If you have 90 minutes to spare, and you need something unserious and lighthearted in the background, I would recommend it. With each decade passing us by, the Freaky Friday franchise has a small place in pop culture that symbolizes modernity and conservatism, all in one setting. It also holds an untimely message for the differences and similarities that tends to be missed as each generation gets older. To raise a complex dynamic that's often underrepresented in media, and support it in a way that lets the audience, old or young, put a mirror to the things that we consider to be our own set of problems, breaks the tradition of never feeling heard by our peers. Every few years, each generation finds themselves asking what they'll be known for in history. And while those answers are skewed, a franchise like this shows that no matter what, in order to move forward, you can't be too stubborn to learn from the past or present. Annabelles and Ellens are all around us, and they always will be. But even without the magic, I think it's only helpful to expose audiences to this franchise, because you do walk away with it with a laugh or with a smile. It's overall a kind message that's supposed to remind you that you're no wiser than the people you keep yourself around, and that it's okay to get a second or third opinion. Which is why the 70s take is the best. Sorry to the Y2K truthers, but you just don't get slapstick humor like that anymore.
Ugh.